In our headlines on this Thursday, February 20th, here in South Korea. President Yoon Suk-yeol this morning attended the pre-trial hearing of the criminal case against him on charges of insurrection before heading to the 10th hearing of his impeachment trial in the afternoon. Meanwhile, trade officials here are sitting down with corporate heavyweights and market researchers to frame out a response strategy as the Trump administration prepares to impose hefty tariffs on all its trade partners. Staying on the local front, a four-way meeting involving government officials and rival party lawmakers aimed at tackling a host of state affairs opens at the Nat'l Assembly right at this hour. President Yoon Suk-yeol is taking part in the 10th hearing of his impeachment trial as we speak, which may or may not be the final hearing ahead of a verdict by the 8-member Constitutional Court to either remove the president from or reinstate him back into the top office. For details on this, our correspondent Oh Soo-young joins me live from the Constitutional Court. Soo-young, welcome. Now, here today's session involves 3 key witnesses. Do tell us more.
Right, Sunny. So President Yoon's 10th impeachment trial hearing today began at 3 p.m., 1 hour later than initially planned, with 3 key witness examinations, starting with Prime Minister Han Duck-soo. Now, Han Duck-soo has previously stated that the president didn't hold a proper cabinet meeting before declaring martial law on December 3rd. And this has been a major ground for impeachment, as the Constitution requires a cabinet meeting and related procedures to implement martial law. Now, Han reiterated this stance on Thursday. He said that the defense minister had not consulted him regarding martial law before recommending it to the president, and said that there were some procedural abnormalities compared to a proper cabinet meeting. But he did stop short of declaring whether or not it was a legitimate cabinet meeting, saying that this isn't his call to make, but should be determined through investigative and judicial procedures. The Prime Minister, however, described how the opposition-led legislatures unilateral budget cuts and extreme politics has been threatening the country's future industries and democracy. Next up is former intelligence official Hong Jang-won, who was summoned as a key witness for the National Assembly side earlier this month. And he returned to the court today for further questioning by Yoon's legal team. Hong claims that there was a list of 14 to 16 figures that President Yoon wanted to arrest under martial law. He believes he was also ordered to aid the Counterintelligence Command in tracking down and detaining the individuals. Then National Police Agency Chief Cho Ji-ho, he'll be attending as well after 2 absences due to illness. He's told prosecutors that Yoon ordered him to arrest lawmakers on the night martial law was declared, and he claims to have heard from the counterintelligence commander 15 names of politicians and judicial figures to detain. Now, Yoon was seated in the courtroom at the start of the hearing, but vacated the seat. His lawyer said that the president felt that him listening to the Prime Minister's responses could be inappropriate for the nation's dignity, and decided to leave.
Right, then, Soo-young, is today's hearing the last before the Constitutional Court's ruling on the president's political fate?
Well, observers say that there could be 1 or 2 additional trial hearings added to the schedule, just in order to wrap up the arguments made by each side so far. And President Yoon would also have to deliver a final statement. And a ruling will likely be made then in the first half of March, as in past impeachment trials, the verdict normally took about 2 weeks to be reached. Now, President Yoon's lawyers have said that they might apply for more witnesses after a day of review, but it's unclear whether the court would approve, given how they've rejected most of the over 30 candidates that Yoon's legal team applied for, and the court has, of course, emphasised a swift trial process. Now, as the court continues to push through the proceedings and shoots down requests made by Yoon's team, his lawyers have said that they might embark on a, quote, big decision, which they have hinted could involve their collective resignation as a show of protest.
I see. All right, Soo-young, thank you for the latest on the president's impeachment trial. Also earlier today, that is Thursday morning, President Yoon Suk-yeol became the first sitting Korean leader to stand trial in a criminal case for his brief imposition of martial law on the evening of December 3rd last year. Our Peunji reports.
The first preliminary hearing of President Yoon's criminal trial on Thursday morning lasted only around 13 minutes. In a suit and a red tie, Yoon was present at the Seoul Central District Court. He was not required to attend, as a defendant does not have to be present at a preliminary hearing. So eyes were on whether if he would speak for himself, but he remained silent throughout. Yoon's lawyers said they need more time, asking for 3 more weeks to review records. The court said the next hearing is on March 24th and said it would proceed with the trial afterward. Meanwhile, a separate hearing was also held to review Yoon's request to have his detention canceled. Earlier this month, Yoon's legal team asked for the court to release the president, having been at the Seoul detention center since his arrest. His lawyers argued that Yoon was indicted a day after the detention period expired on January 25th, while the prosecutors said the whole process was done in a legal manner. The court on Thursday said both sides have 10 days to submit any additional documents and said it would make a decision after a thorough review. Thursday's session marks the start of a criminal trial that could lead to life in prison or even the death penalty for Yoon if found guilty of insurrection. Yoon has now become the first sitting president in South Korean history to undergo a criminal trial. Haeunji, Arirang News.
And over at the Parliament at this hour, Acting President Choi Sang-mok, National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik, ruling party leader Kwon Young-se and opposition party head Lee Jae-myung are gathered at the table to address state affairs. Our political correspondent Ishu is on the line with live coverage. Shu, it's good to have you on. So what's the latest there?
Yes, Sunny, the first meeting of what's called the joint consultative body between the government and the National Assembly just began not long ago, as you said. The 4 respective leaders are right now in a closed-door meeting here at the Parliament. Now, before their private talks, the participants delivered a brief address and laid out their expectations for the evening. Speaker Woo first welcomed the rest, and the acting president Choi said he hopes the meeting will lead to practical achievements that will help the livelihood of the people, saying they, quote, have no time to waste. Now, the meeting is being held to stabilize state affairs in the aftermath of the martial law declaration back in December. The discussion was originally scheduled for earlier this month, but was postponed due to disagreements on the specifics of the agenda. Also attending the meeting are the top aides of the PPP and DP leaders, namely their chief secretaries, policymakers, and spokespeople.
Right, so Shu, what exactly then is on the agenda today?
Right, Sunny. So they're expected to discuss details of the supplementary budget for this year, as well as measures to support the domestic semiconductor industry and improve the national pension system. However, I must note that the participants in the talks this evening did not officially decide on the specifics of the agenda before the meeting tonight. The parties decided to have an open discussion without set subjects instead after unsuccessful attempts at negotiations to set the agenda. As for the supplementary budget, there is bipartisan consensus on the need for additional financing, but there are differences in opinions between the parties on which areas to give the extra support to. The DP is pushing for a prompt processing of a budget of 35 trillion Korean won, while the PPP is insisting on what it calls a tweezers budget that would selectively support the most crucial areas of need to assure fiscal soundness. Now, the PPP is also pushing for a special act to better support the domestic semiconductor industry and boost its competitiveness in the global market. The party is suggesting an exception to the current labor law so that employees in the sector could work for more than 52 hours per week. The DP agrees with the need to support the chip market, but is opposed to the labor law exception that may lead to overwork of those in the industry. Now, as you see, there are clear differences in opinions on several topics tonight, and so it'll likely be a while before we hear of any concrete conclusions, and the discussion may well even end without any agreements tonight. The respective parties will hold briefings afterward in a few hours, which I will keep you posted on throughout the night. Sunny?
All right, Shu, looking to be a very busy night for you. Thank you for that coverage. That was our National Assembly correspondent Ishihu with details of the first 4-way talks involving the government and the Parliament on state affairs post-martial law. And speaking about state affairs, Korean trade officials are reaching out to corporate heavyweights for talks on ways to navigate U.S. tariffs following Trump's most recent remarks about announcing 25% tariffs on cars, ships and pharmaceutical products into the American market. Our Kim Jung-shil reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump is fast-tracking his plans, revealing that new tariffs will be announced sooner than the originally planned April timeline.
I'm going to be announcing tariffs on cars and semiconductors and chips and pharmaceuticals probably, and some other things over the next month or sooner.
In response to the latest trade measures by the U.S., South Korea is intensifying efforts to protect key industries. On Thursday, the Ministry of Trade held a high-level meeting with senior officials from 9 major companies, including Samsung, Hyundai, and LG, to discuss how to handle the looming tariffs. Minister for Trade Chung In-kyo emphasized that the government is fully mobilizing its channels with the U.S. to help South Korean industries overcome the uncertainty they're facing. He added that the government will strengthen collaboration with private think tanks to refine its response strategies. At a separate meeting, the Trade Ministry held the second session of the Industry Policy Council in Seoul, chaired by Deputy Minister for Industrial Policy Lee Seung-yeol. The meeting gathered officials from 10 major sectors, including semiconductors, automobiles, steel, and biotech, to discuss the latest developments. They emphasized the need for bold tax incentives to stimulate investment. Both the government and the private sector plan to collaborate with counterparts in the EU and Japan facing similar challenges. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Now, chips are part of the main drivers of Korea's exports, and that being said, in this next report, our business correspondent Lee Soo-jin takes a look at how chip makers here are planning to weather the storm of higher U.S. tariffs and growing Chinese competition.
South Korea's chip industry is globally recognized for its key role in the semiconductor supply chain. But uncertainties about its future grow amid U.S. President Donald Trump's plans to impose tariffs on imported semiconductors and China's rapid technological advancements.
I've been contacted by some of the biggest companies in the world, and we'll be announcing various very large companies, the biggest actually, and they'll be coming back having to do with chips.
Shifting global dynamics are expected to significantly impact the nation's economy as semiconductors are its top export. In 2024, chips accounted for 20.8% of Korea's total exports, the highest share among all sectors. The tariff threats come as China's CXMT challenges Korea's dominance in memory chips with the successful production of high-performance DRAMs like DDR5 and HBM, both key components for AI and server applications. And this is driving Samsung Electronics to accelerate its technological advancements.
Semiconductors are essential to AI development. Important future developments include bonding technology that builds layers through chipsets and reducing resistance in the back end.
Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix in the third quarter last year had combined market share of a whopping 75.5% in the memory chip sector. But it's not just large conglomerates that are rapidly advancing their technologies.
We have developed a technology that makes materials like Teflon bond well with metals, which was difficult before. This breakthrough is important because it helps create a better foundation for circuit boards.
Yet another local company is supplying big-name firms like SK Hynix and Samsung Electronics with ultrasonic non-destructive testing equipment that scans chips for defects.
Our technology inspects semiconductors before mass production. As we locally produce all our technology, this will also help us avoid tariff-related issues.
The company also plans to further incorporate AI technology as it aims to take part in supply chains overseas as well. Despite concerns over shifting global trade dynamics and competition from overseas, innovation efforts like these are helping Korea's chip industry maintain its edge. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
And Korea will work to develop its own AI-powered large language model like ChatGPT or DeepSeek. Now, plans to this end were shared by Acting President Choi Sang-mok on this Thursday at the third AI committee meeting aimed at placing Korea among the world's top AI powerhouses. Choi spoke of bringing together a strategic team of highly skilled experts to drive Korea's AI ambitions as substantial R&D funding is set aside for a comprehensive infrastructure that supports all AI-related initiatives. Pointing to Korea's leading position in broadband internet connection across the globe, Chair shared optimism about Korea's future AI endeavors. Producer prices rose for the third month in a row in January, driven by higher oil prices. According to the Bank of Korea, the producer price index stood at 120.18 last month, up 0.6% on month. Now, this latest hike is the highest in 17 months. Manufactured items, including petroleum products and agricultural goods, have been keeping this index quite high. On the international front, Russia appears satisfied with current efforts on ending its invasion of Ukraine, while the latter has voiced concern over Mr. Trump's groundless insinuations about who started the war in Ukraine and about the Ukrainian leader's approval rating, which, to be clear, stands at 57% according to the latest public survey. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
After Russian President Vladimir Putin was briefed on the outcome of the recent U.S. Russia talks in Saudi Arabia, the Russian leader expressed satisfaction, saying that he rates the talks highly.
I rate them highly. There are results. They were open to the negotiating process without prejudice and condemnation of what has been done in the past.
When asked about the exclusion of Ukraine from the recent talks in Saudi Arabia, Putin said Ukraine would not be excluded in future talks.
As for the negotiating process, President Trump told me during our phone call, I can confirm it, that of course the U.S. assumes that both Russia and Ukraine will take part in the negotiating process. Nobody is excluding Ukraine from this process, so there are no reasons for such a reaction to the Russia-U.S. meeting.
However, a war of words between the leaders of the U.S. and Ukraine is raising concerns of its potential impact on future negotiations. After the conclusion of the U.S. Russia talks, U.S. President Donald Trump told reporters at Mar-a-Lago that Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky's public approval rating was down to 4%. Zelensky responded that Trump was living in a space of disinformation and expressed hopes that the U.S. leader and his team get a clearer understanding of what's really going on in Ukraine. Ukraine was not the only country left out of the recent negotiation talks. European countries were also absent, forcing their leaders to hold their own emergency meeting. The major talking point has been whether or not the European allies of Ukraine should send troops for further assistance. Germany, Italy, Spain, and Poland expressed reluctance. However, the UK said it is prepared to send its forces to Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer will visit the U.S. next week, hopeful they too can take part in negotiations to end the Ukraine war. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And back on the local front, the leader of a Nigerian drug trafficking ring targeting South Korea has been arrested. According to the National Intelligence Service on this Thursday, the 59-year-old individual called K. Jeff was detained in Nigeria last Thursday following a 5-year joint investigation with Nigerian authorities. Over 45 kilograms of drugs were seized upon his capture. Now, victims here in South Korea were tricked through romance scams into transporting drugs that were hidden in everyday items like chocolates and suitcases. In other news now, Wembley Stadium in London will turn pink this summer because BLACKPINK is poised to perform at the stadium on August 15th to become the first ever K-pop girl group to do so. The group's agency YG Entertainment announced on Thursday that BLACKPINK will kick off a mega world tour this year, starting in Seoul on July 5th. The tour will run through 10 cities, including New York, Paris, Milan, and Tokyo. Now, during their previous Born Pink World Tour, the group set a fresh record by attracting some 1.8 million fans.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In the Middle East, Hamas is set to return the bodies of 4 Israeli hostages, including a mother and her 2 young sons, as part of the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. Hamas confirmed the identities of the 4 bodies on Wednesday, ahead of returning them to Israel on Thursday. They include Shiri Bibas, aged 32, and her 2 young boys, 4 and 9 months old, who for many Israelis have come to symbolize the plight of those taken as hostages. The family had been abducted during the October 2023 attacks on southern Israel and had since been held captive. In addition, the body of 83-year-old retired journalist Oded Lifshitz is also set to be returned. The developments are part of the initial phase of a ceasefire agreement, which includes the release of 6 living Israeli hostages on Saturday in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the nation was torn ahead of the return of the bodies. NATO has begun its largest military exercise of the year, Steadfast Start 2025 in Romania, aimed at enhancing the alliance's rapid deployment capabilities along its eastern border. NATO's largest combat exercise involves approximately 10,000 military personnel from 9 NATO member countries, including the United Kingdom and Spain. Exercises take place across Romania, Bulgaria, and Greece over 6 weeks, focusing on testing the readiness and interoperability of NATO's Allied Reaction Force. The ARF was established in July 2024 and is designed for deployment within 10 days, integrating conventional forces with cyber and space-based technologies. NATO's most powerful member, the U.S., is not involved, reflecting a shift toward Europe's self-reliance in defense. This comes amid uncertainties regarding the U.S. commitment to European security under President Donald Trump's administration. In the United States, Cameron County in Texas has approved an election to determine whether SpaceX's launch site and surrounding areas will be incorporated as the city of Starbase. The vote is scheduled for May 3rd, with early voting set to begin on April 22nd. It will include residents living near the Boca Chica launch facility. A petition initiated in December last year garnered over 70 signatures, primarily from SpaceX employees, meeting the state's requirements for incorporation. If the measure passes, Starbase would become the newest city in Cameron County since 1995. In the Philippines, the Addition Hills Village in Mandaluyong City has launched a program offering residents a bounty for captured mosquitoes. The initiative, introduced on Wednesday, aims to combat the rising cases of dengue fever in the densely populated capital region by offering 1 Philippine peso, which is less than 2 U.S. cents, for every 5 dead or alive mosquitoes or larvae turned in. The strategy was implemented following a significant increase in dengue cases in the country, with over 28,000 reported nationwide as of February 1st, marking a 40% rise compared to last year. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
Currently, a cold wave warning is in effect for both inland and mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province, and a cold wave advisory for other central inland areas and northern Gyeongsang-buk-do province. Seoul rose up to only 2 degrees during the day today, but the feels-like temperature was even lower. The morning temperature will drop to -7 degrees Celsius, about 4 degrees lower than the average for this time of year. Meanwhile, the atmosphere is getting drier day by day. Dry weather warnings are being extended further with strong winds of around 50 meters per second nationwide. Please be extra careful to avoid causing wildfires. Tomorrow morning will stay freezing across the country with Daegu and Gyeongju at -5 degrees. Highs will move up to only 2 degrees in Seoul and 4 degrees in Chuncheon, Daejeon, and Gwangju. This cold spell will persist until the weekend. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the top stories at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session. Do stay with us.